One of the many things that makes humans unique is our sense of morality. Our ability to differentiate between right and wrong is an inherent skill that drives nearly every decision that we make day to day, and also the decisions that can shape the world as we know it. Many companies face these same moral dilemmas in their hunt for profit, but even when a company claims to be bettering the world, they often make questionable decisions to get there, forcing us to ask whether the ends truly justify the means. One particular company in this day and age comes to mind that fits this description, and was also experiencing controversy about how their actions are affecting our world, as well as questioning whether the people running that company have humanity's best intentions at heart. That company is Palantir, and today we'll take a look at why some call this the most evil company in the world. Some of you may have heard the name Palantir being thrown around in financial media circles, but who exactly is Palantir, and what do they do? Palantir is a data analytics company which was founded in 2003 by Peter Thiel, Stephen Cohen, Alex Karp, Joe Lonsdale, and Nathan Gettings. You might best know the company for its association with Peter Thiel and Alex Karp, which is no coincidence. Peter Thiel is best known as one of the founders of the payment service PayPal and served as its CEO until it was sold to eBay in 2002 for $1.5 billion. One of the things that made PayPal such a great service was its fraud detection software, which Thiel chose to carry over to Palantir alongside its personnel. This software marked the beginning of what Palantir would eventually become. It was also at this time that Thiel made Karp the CEO of the company, which at the time was a weird decision as Karp did not have any engineering or startup experience, but rather a legal background. However, this decision would heavily impact and shape the direction of Palantir going forward, which was emphasized in this quote by Karp, quote, "We're not just a software company. We exist to solve the world's most significant problems," end quote. Embodying the belief that Palantir from the very start emphasized social impact over profit, cultivating a corporate culture that prioritized more than just financial gain. Nevertheless, Palantir began developing their software while trying to find investors willing to put money into the company. However, this was difficult as Palantir didn't have much to offer investors at this point, and in the aftermath of the dot-com bubble, many were very wary of investing in tech startups. Palantir would eventually find success with their technology through the FBI. The FBI was aware of Palantir's fraud detection software and used it in their efforts to detect financial crimes. This moment would solidify Palantir's ties to assisting the interests of the US government. And while it was great for Palantir to find someone who could use their tech, it was the opportunities and the doors the FBI opened that would help the company in the long run. Soon Thiel and Karp met with an official from the Department of Defense named John Poindexter. Poindexter saw the potential of their company and assisted in presenting them to various people within the US government. However, Palantir still needed investors, and their ties to the government didn't help, as working with the government was seen as very unpopular in Silicon Valley, and few investors saw the potential in providing national security tech. This didn't help their investment problems, but through their contacts, they were eventually recommended to seek investment from a venture capital firm by the name of In-Q-Tel. But In-Q-Tel isn't your average Silicon Valley venture capital firm. No, it is actually the non-profit investment arm of the CIA, created specifically to find and fund the technology that the US intelligence community needs to stay ahead. And if there is one thing that the CIA likes, it is ensuring national security. In-Q-Tel would go on to invest $2 million in the company, eyeing the potential of not only what the technology could become, but also the company's mission statement to solve the world's problems. And in 2004, the US government had a lot of problems that needed to be solved. And this would manifest in the next piece of technology the company would create, which would lay the foundation for Palantir. I believe most of you are familiar with the tragedy of the 9/11 terrorist attacks that took place on American soil. And I also believe that you are aware of the reactionary response from the US government, the beginning of the war on terror. This act would set in motion one of the biggest investments into military industrialization that we had ever seen. This also meant that contractors who were willing to supply the tools to fuel this campaign had an opportunity to profit heavily from the situation. One of these contractors would be Palantir in the form of their newly created data analytics platform, codenamed Gotham. And in 2008, Palantir would see the CIA using their newly established platform. The transition to using the technology wasn't smooth though, as Palantir had also offered the tech to agencies such as the NSA and FBI, who rejected the platform at first. They already had established systems in place and they were concerned about the constitutional implications of using such a powerful tool, which is ironic as you will later see. However, with time, they began seeing the platform for what it could do and turned their initial skepticism into becoming happy customers, and there was a reason for that. A campaign such as the War on Terror creates a lot of data. We're talking about reports of roadside bombings, logistical data, and even making connections between things like garage door openers and improvised explosive devices. There is a vast amount of information that needs to be analyzed to optimize military efforts, and Gotham was the only platform providing a service to analyze this exact type of data and come up with suggestions on how the efforts could be improved. Another big factor that played into why Gotham was being more heavily utilized was the pressure from department heads to do everything possible to prevent another attack like the one seen on September 11th. By 2013, Gotham had become operational across the whole palette of the US intelligence community. We're talking about the CIA, the FBI, NSA, the US Marine Corps, the Air Force, Special Operations, and the Department of Homeland Security. What made Gotham so different from other similar tools was the platform's ability to create breakthrough innovations in the way it analyzed data. It created a semantic layer that transforms raw data into objects representing people, places, things, and events, and even maps the relationships between them. This meant analysts could create multiple databases simultaneously, breaking down the information silos that had prevented agencies from detecting the 9/11 plot. What once required a team of analysts working for months could now be accomplished by one person in hours. Interestingly enough, during the revelations made by Edward Snowden in 2013 regarding the US's many surveillance systems orchestrated against their own civilians, Palantir was mentioned in those documents. Apparently, they had helped create a tool that would be used in an NSA surveillance program, and when later pressed on the issue, they assured the public that they only did it in regards to gathering foreign intelligence. But it was clear that the platform protecting America from foreign threats could just as easily monitor Americans themselves. However, it was clear that Palantir's Gotham platform had been a significant assistance in saving countless lives during the campaigns in Iraq and Afghanistan, and later this platform would also see its use in combating the threat of so-called homegrown terrorism. From 2013 to 2016, Palantir provided military-grade surveillance tools to local police departments in an effort to assist with their mission to keep their local streets safe. One of these being the Los Angeles Police Department. The LAPD deployed Gotham as part of an operation named Laser. This consisted of the platform gathering data so it could begin mapping out different neighborhoods with scores relating to how much crime was being committed in those areas, essentially creating hotspots for policing. The idea was to map out which areas were experiencing the most crime and try to predict where it was going to happen next. This allowed them to provide these areas with more attention while also mapping out offenders who had committed crimes to predict which ones would strike again and where, essentially creating a surveillance effort to catch criminals before they acted. And while this sounds good on paper, you can imagine what this meant for the people experiencing this heightened level of policing. It ultimately resulted in more targeted surveillance, suppression, and increased policing all under the umbrella of preventing crime. However, as mentioned before, this program was shut down in 2016 and it was due to legal issues. A court ordered the program to be terminated immediately after determining that the way it was being used resulted in the violation of constitutional protections as well as reinforcing racial biases. And while it was terminated, this example only showed exactly what Palantir was able to do and what Gotham was able to deliver. Another notable partnership the Palantir have is with the US Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. Beginning in 2012 under the Obama administration, Palantir have been contracted to create two systems for ICE and its deportation branches. The first being the Investigative Case Management System, or ICM, a tool built on the Gotham platform that acts as a central nervous system for ICE. It allows its agents to access a vast ecosystem of data, including school records, employment history, phone records, biometric data, and home addresses. All incredibly useful when trying to pinpoint individuals for detention. The second one is Falcon, an addition to the ICM system. Falcon is an add-on that allows agents to map out relationships between individuals. If ICE has one person in custody, Falcon helps them visualize their entire family and social network to find others using the data gathered from the ICM system. Initially, these systems were used to track transnational criminal organizations such as cartel members and human traffickers. However, under the Trump administration's zero-tolerance policy, the scope of the software has expanded to target all undocumented immigrants. The technology proved especially effective during ICE's workplace raids. One notable event occurred in 2019 in Mississippi, dubbed the Chicken Plant Raid, where nearly 700 people were arrested in a single day. The systems also assisted in the infamous family separations at the border because the software could link parents to children through data dots. Critics argue that Palantir's technology was a technical backbone that allowed the government to carry out the systematic separations of families. As mentioned before, while these contracts began in 2012, they have been renewed ever since, and with the current focus on mass deportations, it's unlikely that those contracts will expire anytime soon. These examples of tailoring the Gotham platform to suit any government contractor's needs are what set Palantir apart from other software developers, as well as their seemingly total lack of concern regarding the ethical questions that their solutions might raise. However, despite all this, Palantir now found themselves with a viable product and a stable revenue stream in the form of government contracts and deep connections inside the national security space. But while this was a lucrative position to be in, Palantir also knew that this space, while profitable, limited its growth potential. It was time to expand beyond the state and reap the rewards to be found in the private sector. While Gotham provided Palantir with a platform that could analyze immense sets of data, it did not translate well to a private business perspective. They had to re-engineer the platform to suit the needs of business enterprises, and they succeeded. In 2015, they managed to develop a new platform purely meant to meet the needs of corporations, and they called this platform Foundry. Foundry was a tool for creating value through the data that it was fed. But how was it different from Gotham, and how did it work? Well, Foundry's biggest selling point was that it created a so-called digital twin of an entire corporation and plugged itself into that copy. Imagine having the power to see every single heartbeat of a global empire. As a CEO using Foundry, you aren't just looking at spreadsheets. You're looking at a live map of every minute of employee productivity, every product on the line, and every cent wasted. It grants a single person godlike control over thousands of workers across the globe, all from a single laptop. This is the ultimate AI manager, a system that never sleeps, never misses a mistake, and ensures that every move a company makes is tracked and analyzed. Another defining feature of Foundry is what Palantir calls the ontology, which they describe as a digital cockpit that allows an executive to not only see the data, but actively control various parts of the company in real time. For instance, if you're managing a billion-dollar corporation and notice a disruption, the ontology allows you to cancel a shipment in a subsidiary halfway across the world with a single click. It turns complicated data into actions you can perform, and because of this, the corporate world found Foundry incredibly intriguing. Leveraging the deep connections they built within the government, Palantir quickly found major private businesses that were eager to install this new digital brain into their operations. By late 2015, Palantir partnered up with the commercial aircraft manufacturer Airbus to assist in optimizing the manufacturing of its planes. The partnership was a massive success, helping Airbus optimize their delivery time by 33%. At the same time, Palantir partnered up with American chocolate manufacturer Hershey's to boost sales by analyzing consumer behavior and turning that data into increased revenue. They even provided JP Morgan with tools to optimize their financial operations. The fact that all of this happened in the same year goes to show that Palantir's technology is extremely effective. However, Foundry only really became a household name during the COVID-19 pandemic. While the COVID-19 virus ravaged the world, the US was in the midst of creating a platform to better analyze the massive data sets gathered during the crisis, which consisted of infection rates, testing needs, supply logistics, the national vaccination program, and lots more. Palantir provided the core data analytics components for the Health and Human Services Platform prototype, which was meant to analyze this data, as well as the final components for the completed system. And it was a huge success. Palantir was praised for its involvement, as the platform was able to analyze in mere days what would have previously taken months. But their involvement in healthcare did not stop with the US government. In 2020, as part of the COVID-19 relief effort in the UK, the National Health Service, or NHS, awarded Palantir an emergency contract to mine patient data and consolidate government databases. This was intended to help officials respond to the pandemic, but when the contract was later extended, it sparked a massive public outcry. The primary issue was that the contract was awarded without a proper tender process, which many saw as a lack of fair competition. Furthermore, it raised serious questions regarding data protection. Palantir had been awarded the contract based solely on their technical ability, with seemingly little regard for how they would safeguard the information that they handled. When you take into account that this system processed sensitive patient records and even recorded phone calls, it's understandable why politicians and privacy groups were alarmed. Given Palantir's history, critics questioned whether they had adequate safeguards in place or if they would simply use the data however they saw fit. This lack of transparency follows Palantir to this day, but for now, these criticisms don't really matter because the company was gearing up for the next big milestone in its history. With such a unique company in the tech sector, you would think that investors would value it at an extremely high price. And you would be right. From a valuation of roughly $700 million in 2010, Palantir skyrocketed to a $15 billion valuation by 2015. That is more than a 20x increase in just 5 years. However, at this time, it was still a private company, and private valuations are very different from public ones as they are based on different metrics and thus does not necessarily show a complete picture. But despite that, the rise was undeniable. And by 2020, with the mastering of Gotham and the success of Foundry, it was clear to investors that it was time to go public. On the 30th of September 2020, Palantir went public through a direct listing. This method is different from a traditional IPO in 3 key ways. The first one being that it avoids the massive fees paid to investment banks in relation to the public listing. The second one is that while most direct listings allow anyone to sell on day one, Palantir added a twist by enforcing a lockup period, preventing insiders from dumping all of their shares immediately. And the third one being that choosing a direct listing sends a specific message to the world, that Palantir does not follow the traditional rules of Silicon Valley. It was a move that perfectly encapsulated what the company was all about, doing things their own way and on their own terms. On the company's first day of trading, the stock actually closed below its initial price, opening at $10 a share and closing at a disappointing $9.50, barely maintaining its $15 billion valuation. However, this was only a small bump in the road, because by early 2021, the stock had climbed to nearly $35 a share, pushing the company's valuation towards $50 billion. While the following years were a struggle as Palantir fought to become consistently profitable and find its footing, the long-term bet has paid off. As of early 2026, Palantir's stock price has surged to over $170 a share, with a total market valuation exceeding $420 billion. It is an incredible achievement for a company that has been public for just over 5 years. But this valuation has created a new wave of skeptics. Many call these numbers absurd based on Palantir's actual earnings, which is understandable since Palantir currently trades at 600 times its earnings, joining the ranks of companies like Tesla and Nvidia, where the stock price is driven more by future potential than current profits. Investors remain intrigued though, mostly because of Palantir's massive push into artificial intelligence. In 2023, they introduced the Artificial Intelligence Platform, or AIP, designed to help organizations integrate AI systems into their companies. If this platform proves to be as effective as Gotham and Foundry, it's safe to say that this will cement Palantir's dominance in the tech space for years to come. However, only time will tell if they can continue to justify the hype. Palantir is a controversial company, and it has been so from the very start. I mean, Peter Thiel is associated with the company and is its creator.
I think you would prefer the human race to endure, right? You're hesitating.
Yeah, well,
yes?
I don't know. I would
This is a long hesitation. This is a long hesitation.
There's so many questions implicit in this.
Should the human race survive?
And ever since the first release of Gotham, the company has been drowning in controversy, and as technology accelerates, that controversy only grows. When looking at Gotham and the many platforms that have sprung from it, one has to ask, does this go too far? While many of the examples mentioned in this video involve criminals, who I honestly don't have any sympathy for, the real ethical questions arises when the wrong people get a hold of this power. What happens when they expand the definition of who is a criminal? What happens when the system makes a mistake but the data insists that it is right? Do the people responsible simply insist that the technology is always right? And what happens when an innocent person is accused? What is done then? The same concerns applies to Foundry. As more companies implement these solutions, massive amounts of sensitive data are being processed. Can we be sure it's being handled responsibly? I mean, who are the watchdogs ensuring this happens, and how do we punish wrongdoing? Because it seems that when instances of misconduct occurs, the punishment is rarely more than a slap on the wrist. How much do ethics really matter when all the power is huddled within a single system? This becomes even more concerning as leaders around the world seem increasingly interested in undermining the privacy of ordinary citizens, creating a vacuum that allows companies like Palantir to thrive. Personal data and ethical standards often seem like an afterthought in the rush to implement new tech. But despite all of this, one question still remains. Is Palantir really the world's most evil company? Well, it's a difficult question to answer, but to me the answer is rather straightforward. Palantir is merely a tool. It only does what it was built to do. It is the ethics and the standards of the people who use it that we should truly question. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video and subscribe if you want to see more. This has been another tale from Wall Street, and I'll see you in the next video.